I play a lot of Commander, and I'm one of those weirdos that keeps detailed stats on each game I play. Nothing too crazy, just things like which commanders I play against, who won, how they won, and if I can remember to track it, how many turns the game lasted. And as I was looking through my games from this year, one particular card, or rather an archetype of cards, kept showing up as a game-winning spell. And that card archetype was Fogs. Fog is a slang term used to describe spells that prevent all combat damage for a turn. Unsurprisingly, it was named after Fog, a 1-mana green instant that was released in Magic's alpha set. While Fogs haven't seen a ton of play in competitive Magic, they can be particularly powerful in a control or combo deck that needs to stall the game long enough so they can cast their game-ending spells. Taken to the extreme, there's actually a 60-card deck known as Turbo Fog, where the entire game plan is to fog nearly every combat before eventually winning by decking your opponent. Of course, fogs are much less effective in Commander. I mean, there are 3 combats in between each of your turns. Can one fog really protect you? Not to mention, Commander is full of alternative win conditions and life loss effects, both of which don't care about fog. And yet, in my games, the players casting fog keep winning, and I think I've figured out why. The answer is in the social contract of Commander. Whether explicitly stated or not, Commander players generally try to keep other players alive until they can kill off the entire table in one go. And I totally get it. We've all been there. It sucks when you're the first one to die and have to sit and wait for 30, 40, even 50 minutes before the game finally ends. I think this is a huge reason why so many players try to end games with Alpha Strike plays that either remove multiple players at once or win you the game on the spot. And I think you know exactly the kind of cards I'm talking about, the Craterhoof Behemoth, Akroma's Will, or Insurrection kind of cards. And to be clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong with these cards. They're excellent game enders. My only point is that as players trend towards these cards, fogs only become better and better. Not to mention, players tend to overextend when going for the win, meaning a well-timed fog won't just derail their plans, but set you up for the victory. Okay, now that you are 100% convinced that fogs are underrated and should be added to basically every deck, let's talk about the best fogs in the format. While green has the most actual fogs, there are options in every color and colorless. Let's start with green. There's no way I can mention every fog variation available, but I do want to highlight my favorites. Obscuring Haze is the oft-forgotten final card in the cast for free if you control your commander cycle. While Deflecting Swat and Fierce Guardianship stole the show, Obscuring Haze is very underrated in my opinion. Not only is it one-sided, but it prevents all damage, not just combat damage. This is rare among fogs, but very valuable as it can stop creatures like Perforos God of the Forge or Niv-Mizzet Perun, for example. Moment's Peace has Flashback, meaning it's usually 2 fogs in one. Tangle stops attacking creatures from untapping. Snag can be cast for free by discarding a forest and only prevents damage from unblocked creatures, meaning you can still make favorable blocks to destroy a creature or two. Similarly, Winds of Kalsizma can be one-sided if you control a creature with power 4 or more, which is largely trivial in Commander. There are also several fogs with additional benefits beyond just negating combat damage. Blessed Respite doubles as Graveyard Hate. You Look Upon the Tarrasque is also a combat trick and lure. Moonmist can transform all your humans, which works with werewolves, sure, but is hilarious with cards like Jaren, Corrupted Bishop, or Rona, Herald of Invasion. Druid's Deliverance comes with a free creature if you can take advantage of Populate. Speaking of free creatures, Arachnogenesis and Galadrim Ambush make a token for each attacking creature, and again are one-sided. You can even ramp while you fog with Jaheira's Respite. 5 mana is a lot though. Finally, green also has a special group of repeatable fog effects. These can be especially brutal, as in the right situation, they can shut down combat damage for the rest of the game. Constant Mists and Sporefrog are probably the most infamous examples, but I also want to mention Dawnstrider and Spikeweaver. One thing to remember about onboard fogs, however, is that they are known information, meaning your opponents can play around them, unlike a traditional fog spell. This is a downside, as part of what makes fogs so effective is that your opponent doesn't see it coming. Moving on, let's take a look at white. And to be honest, I actually think white's fogs are better than green. Yes, green has more options overall, but white fogs are just on another level, starting with the most popular fog in the format, Teferi's Protection. Unlike every other fog I've mentioned, Teferi's protection lasts until your next turn. Not only that, but it only protects you, meaning you can leverage a powerful attack to save you the trouble of taking out your other opponents. Even outside of Teferi's protection, however, white has a ton of great options. Ethereal Haze and Holy Day are literally just fog but white. Kamiya False Hope is basically Spore Frog. Pollen Lullaby is similar to Tangle, only it hits all creatures if you win the clash, not just the attacking ones. Selfless Squire is a soldier that prevents combat damage and gets +1/+1 counters equal to the damage you prevent. Frontline Strategist, another soldier, has Morph and provides a one-sided fog for soldier decks. Knight Captain of Eos can repeatedly fog the table for as long as you have soldiers to sacrifice. And I don't know what's going on with soldiers, but they are great at preventing damage. Dawn Charm is a fog, limited counterspell, and protection piece all in one. You've also got Comeuppance, one of the coolest fogs in the game as it redirects the damage you're preventing back to the creature or player that is dealing it. Riot Control, which is pictured in the thumbnail, is also incredibly underrated. Not only does it gain you a bunch of life, but it prevents all forms of damage, not just damage from creatures. Similar to Teferi's protection, it also only protects you, leaving your opponents unaffected and open to another player's Alpha Strike. White also has several fog-adjacent spells. Moment of Silence, Mandate of Peace, and Orum's Chant, for example. I'd even count cards like Martyrdom and Gideon's Sacrifice as a fog, both of which pair exceptionally well with cards like Stuffy Doll or Phyrexian Vindicator. Last of all for white, I should mention Solitary Confinement, a permanent fog effect that also gives you Shroud as long as you have cards to discard on your upkeep. Next, I want to group black, red, and blue together, as there just isn't as many options. Not to mention, most of the options I've come up with are only pseudo-fogs at best. Darkness is the obvious choice for black, as it's literally a color-shifted fog. Outside of that, however, black is pretty limited. Though you could argue that Angel of Suffering is a repeatable-ish fog that also fills your graveyard. In red, you've got two interesting options. First, Glacial Crevices is a repeatable fog effect as long as you have a snow-covered mountain to sacrifice. This card is incredible, especially if you have land recursion in your deck. You've also got Impulsive Maneuvers in red, a hilarious card that either completely blanks a creature's attack or doubles its damage. While unreliable, if you've got a Krark's Thumb or just love chaos, I'd say it's absolutely worth it. Sadly for red, both of these options are on board, meaning your opponents can play around them. Blue actually has quite a few fog-like cards to consider. Spells like Downsize and Hysterical Blindness can work as one-sided fogs against many go-wide token decks. Cards like Deluge or Cryptic Command can also be used to essentially counter a combat phase. You've also got Mirror Match, which, while expensive to cast, can be an absolute blowout, and I might even count Illusionist Gambit in this category. Similar to Solitary Confinement, blue also has a couple of permanent fog options in Energy Field and Thought Lash. Energy Field pairs wonderfully with Rest in Peace, and Thought Lash lets you exile your entire library to win with Thassa's Oracle? Finally, let's go over some colorless and multicolor fog options. Glacial Chasm is easily the most popular and brutal colorless fog. It's typically run in lands decks that have no problem sacrificing it and recurring it from their grave as needed. A more interesting and less broken option, however, is Sunstone, another repeatable effect as long as you have snow-covered lands to sacrifice. You could also argue that a card like Pariah's Shield, paired with an indestructible creature, could work as a pseudo-fog. Surprisingly, there aren't actually that many multicolor fog cards worth mentioning. Of course, Inkshield is quite possibly the most fun fog spell ever made. While inefficient, there's nothing better than turning certain death into certain victory after you make 50 or more 2/1 flyers. Sadly, I would only recommend Inkshield in decks that run other mana sinks, as holding up 5 mana turn after turn is just too high of a cost. Batwing Broom is a much better option in Orzhov in my opinion, protecting your life total while draining your attacker for just 2 mana. Energy Arc is another fantastic fog that doubles as an untap spell in the right deck. I'll also mention Take the Bait as another fun fog that sends your attackers at another opponent. Okay, we made it through all of my favorite fogs. But we still have one final question to answer. How many fogs should you run in your decks? Obviously, that's a little deck dependent, changing based on your strategy and colors. That said, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest including at least one fog in every deck. And in green or white decks, I'd bump that up to 3 or 4, as so many fog spells offer other effects that can fit whatever strategy you're doing. But what do you think? Are you a fog believer? How many fogs do you run in your decks? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe to help my channel grow.